Catelyn Stark meets a tragic end in Game of Thrones Season 3, but her death would have been worse with George R.R. Martin's original plan. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire books haven't revealed the fates of all his characters just yet, but Catelyn and Robb Stark perish fairly early in the series, and in a very similar way to their book counterparts. Both characters dying at the Red Wedding may have come as a surprise to TV-only fans, but those familiar with Martin's series knew it was coming. And although Catelyn's death at the hands of the Frys, Boltons, and Lannisters is pretty gruesome, it's nothing compared to what she could have faced. Martin's original Game of Thrones plan saw a handful of storylines playing out much differently than they do in the books and show. From Sansa and Joffrey having a child to Jaime Lannister claiming the Iron Throne, Martin's initial outline for his Song of Ice and Fire books is almost unrecognizable from his end product. In it, Catelyn Stark didn't die at the Red Wedding, but she still met a grim end. There was no Red Wedding in GRM's original plan. Robb Stark died on the battlefield instead. The reason Catelyn didn't die at the Red Wedding in Martin's initial Song of Ice and Fire plan is that the incident didn't exist. This seems to be a twist Martin came up with later, though he always intended for Robb and Catelyn to die. In the author's original outline, Robb perished on the battlefield instead of at the Red Wedding. In some ways, it's a fitting fate for the character, who becomes cocky after racking up a number of wins against the Lannisters. And Robb would have harmed Joffrey in the process, allowing him to deliver some retribution for Ned's execution. However, it's perhaps more fitting that Robb's diplomatic shortcomings result in his downfall instead. And it's so much more tragic that his mother is present for his death, raising the emotional stakes of the Red Wedding. Catelyn didn't accompany Robb as he went to war in Martin's original outline, meaning she wouldn't witness his death or die alongside him. She also wouldn't become the undead and vengeful Lady Stoneheart, a development that only exists in the Asoyaf books, but with Martin's initial plans for Catelyn, it almost didn't happen at all. How Catelyn died in GRM's original plan and why it means no Lady Stoneheart. She perished north of the Wall. Catelyn Stark in Game of Thrones wearing fur coat. With the Red Wedding not happening in Martin's original Asoyaf plan, Catelyn died another way, and it happened north of the Wall. The books and TV show never took Catelyn there, but Martin's outline saw Catelyn fleeing to the Wall on the heels of Ned's death. She took Bran and Arya with her, presumably afraid of retaliation from the Lannisters. Unfortunately, Benjen wasn't able to help her, so she wound up traveling beyond the Wall. This sealed Catelyn's fate, as Martin intended for her to be killed by the others, better known as the White Walkers in Game of Thrones. The others are the real threat of Martin's fantasy series. Catelyn's initial demise would have highlighted how dangerous they really are. It also would have been a more gruesome end for her character than the one she eventually got. While the Red Wedding was devastating, it wasn't totally surprising in a series so focused on human power struggles and evils. Tywin's actions during Robert's rebellion made it clear he'd go this far, and Catelyn's death was quick. She also returned and took revenge on her enemies as Lady Stoneheart. By contrast, Catelyn's original Song of Ice and Fire fate would have seen her dying afraid and in an unfamiliar place. She wouldn't be expecting the others, while she at least knew the risks she and Robb were taking with their war against the Lannisters. Her original death might not have been quick, and it could even have seen Catelyn returning in a worse way than she does in A Song of Ice and Fire. Catelyn Stark could have returned in an even worse way. Her original Song of Ice and Fire death could have made her a White. If Catelyn Stark had been killed by the others like Martin intended, she probably would have returned as a White in the later Song of Ice and Fire books. This would arguably be worse than her Lady Stoneheart fate, as it could result in her attacking her own children. Lady Stoneheart only seeks vengeance against those responsible for the Red Wedding, but having Catelyn become a White would be heartbreaking for her and the rest of the Starks. It's probably for the best that Martin didn't go with this original plan for Catelyn Stark, and that's true for many of the changes he made from his original outline. His willingness to shift his plans also resulted in the Red Wedding, which went down as one of the biggest moments in A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. It's difficult to envision the books or show without it, a fact that further proves Martin made the right choice.